Hi everyone, welcome. I know many of you. I'm Dr. Roseanne Iverson, Dr. Alex Meininger, Dr. Josh Welch. I'm family physician, board certified ortho and sports medicine, and board certified family medicine. And we're really happy to collaborate together and give you this talk about the Steamboat athlete. Most people here tonight are here because they live an active lifestyle, be it you're a grandma, grandpa, a parent, a child, or any of the above. So the athletes truly are you and me. And what's unique about this town compared to some other towns, you might know some other towns, like maybe in Boulder, if you're a runner, you're a runner, and you're a runner, and you're a runner. Here, we do everything. People, because of the season changes, we tend to do multiple sports, be it manic and mountain biking and telemark skiing, or running and biking and skiing and every type of biking, bike ski. I know there's some horseback riders here tonight, some canoers, some hikers, some runners. So we do all sorts of sports. A little one-wheeling here. We're not just Olympians.
Thanks to Roseanne and Josh for inviting and helping to organize. Again, I'm Dr. Meininger, and I practice orthopedics and sports medicine here at SOCI, so we're proud to host and collaborate. Topics we wanted to get to, we're discussing overuse injuries, signs, symptoms, and methods of prevention. So I like Dr. Iverson's approach to the Steamboat athlete. I think that's why a lot of us live here, right? We want to be active, we want to stay active, we want to do everything there is to do here. But sometimes too much of a good thing can lead to injury or overuse injuries, and these can slow us down, cause us pain, or keep us from the activities we love to do. So how do you define what an overuse injury is? Well, excessive, repeated exercise that results in injury to the bones, muscles, or tendons involved in the action is the technical definition of what an overuse injury might be. Generic layman's terms might be simple tendinitis or inflammation or irritation of the joints, tendons, etc. If we want to describe how overuse injuries are, we begin with the symptoms, that it's pain aggravated by activity. So perhaps you play too many hours of racket sports, pickleball, tennis, you run too far on the treadmill, or if you bike too long, you find that those activities are going to flare up each respective joint or irritate something. It might manifest with stiffness and loss of mobility or weakness in the joint or the extremity. Textbooks and literature can even classify these or grade them on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 might be that annoying nuisance. You might even just rub it out at home and say, oh, my knee feels fine, all the way to type 5 pain, where you feel that, you know what, I'm going to pass on that long hike. My knee's really bothering me. So we don't want to get that far. We want to use prevention strategies, and we want to think about how we can identify overuse injuries, what causes them, how do we prevent them. And if you look at it, we can identify both intrinsic and extrinsic causes. So those intrinsic ones, if everybody...
Thank you.
Is that better?
It's all about me here.
Yeah, perfect. No, we're fine. Intrinsic injuries being those that are innate to the athlete, right? So did you begin training for that marathon too late? Did you try to do too many miles too soon? Did you ride too many miles consecutive in a weekend? These are the intrinsic thoughts, decisions, the motivations that we might put on ourselves, overburden the body, and contribute to the overuse. Then you have to look at what the extrinsic things are. And these can be pressures, so from our coaches, from our spouses, from our athletic trainers, those that might say, we need to be at these metrics by these dates. They can also be extrinsic forces upon our equipment. Maybe the running shoes are too worn out, contributing to tendinitis. Maybe you're using the wrong size grip on your tennis racket. That can lead to tennis elbow and other symptoms as well. So keeping an attitude to look at the whole picture, both as the athlete, the participant, and what factors are contributing is important. It can also be the environment we're running in, right? If you were to take a flat ground runner from Florida and they try to run this weekend, run rabbit run, the hills are going to aggravate them and maybe a different activity that exceeds the capacity they've trained for, and that's going to break through and contribute to overuse symptoms coming up. And then there's the forces that are put upon them by coaches and others, and that can be the timing and the individualization that's an important part of overuse and how we can work together to kind of prevent these. If you take those intrinsic and extrinsic factors together, you can kind of invert them into a pyramid. And so you identify the athlete, the participant. It may be a parent looking at a son, or maybe a coach looking at the athletes and say, well, what sport are we looking to do here? This person is a cross-country runner, this person is a alpine skier. How are we going to increase their exercise plan to maximize their proficiency, make the strongest athlete we can? And that's called load, or the application of force upon the athlete in a cumulative definition. So the number of workouts, number of intensities, number of miles that you add is described as the load. And monitoring that load is kind of the goal of athlete development, right? So we as recreational and weekend warriors, we want to look at ourselves and say, well, are we overdoing it, or are we concentrating all of our workouts into 3 days? And that's maybe a downside. So if you find your free time is limited, then we need to break that down and design our program appropriately. If you're looking to become a professional athlete, or you're watching your children grow up as professional athletes, you might see that load applied differently and their training is maybe more intensive. So that's how we can kind of develop the athletes. And then once you find the sport and the athlete and they match together, then we want to identify movement strategies. Are their upper extremity kinematics, and is their throwing appropriate so they're not at risk that they're going to develop tendonitis or a growth plate injury in the youth athletes? Is their bicycle set up in the proper position that they can ride a century bike on Saturday? If their seat's too high, their pedals are not malpositioned, you might find that their movement efficiency is not ideal. And then we need that structured program to take all these components together. So the athlete understands their plan, the coach understands the plan, and the equipment specific to them, and a healthy dose of luck helps to keep away the spirits of an overuse injury. So what are the techniques we want to use to avoid them? So number one is to prepare. We want to plan for what type of activity we're looking for. If we're, again, a long distance marathon runner, or we're a competitive winter sports club telemark skier like Roseanne's children have been, then we have different applications, different activities in the gym that we're going to do. It's important that you're ready for the exercise too, right? You don't just close the office door and run out the door. You need a gradual warm-up period. You need to be stretching the muscles, get the circulation up, and you need to design your program in the season to go gradually. So that's called periodization, taking the calendar and having a gradual ramp up and a period of rest, followed by another period of ramp up, and maybe your next plateau is even higher, maximizing your strength. And then variety is important too. So that's why I think diversity in activities is encouraged. If you're a cyclist and having some miles on the trail running, or if you're a weightlifter and you want to do, if you want to be a swimmer or things like that, just diversifying activity exerts different muscle groups, puts different forces through the joints, uses those kinetic chains in a different way. I think the most difficult thing for all of us to really wrap our minds around to avoid overtraining and overuse injuries is really the rest component. So being able to recognize that we need periods of rest. If you really think about exercise, what you're doing is sustaining micro injuries to all the structures. The muscles, tendons, and bones are sustaining micro tears, or the sarcomeres, those contractile elements to the muscles, have become torn or ruptured, and that's where muscle soreness comes from. If we can give opportunity for recovery, those muscles are going to build back stronger than they were before. If you take an injured, damaged muscle from a 50-mile run on Saturday, you try to do it again on Sunday and you weren't trained for it, you're going to find the repercussions. Or the bones may result in stress fractures, for instance, that the microfractures become real, and then there's demanded rest upon your schedule. So Steamboat Orthopaedic Spine Institute, we're proud members of the Academy of Orthopedic Sports Medicine, contributors to the Stop Sports Injuries campaign. That's the sports trauma and overuse prevention. It's largely geared towards our youth athletes and participation in sports. It's one of the founding members, Dr. Andrews from the Southeast, Florida and Alabama, helped to pioneer, but I think identifying this participation in year-round sports is also a detriment to the athletes and their skeletal development. So persons that might play year-round travel baseball or travel soccer, they might be at high risk of developing overuse injuries, or even growth plate strains or fractures that can even distort their growth if they're not recognized. So the youth sports and the Academy of Sports Medicine and our practice being participants have helped to work to design programs, use the accepted international guidelines to help make recommendations for sports and to avoid sports injuries. And literature is abundant on their website for different things, and you can look at running and how proper ways are to ramp up running distance, what running training protocols should look like, and how to keep out of our offices, for instance. Then the abundance of science in the literature is also helping to support how we can prevent overuse injuries. So randomized trials looking at 2 different groups and how we can train for running events and avoid being laid up. They've looked at marathon runners in the New York Marathon. Also looked to exercise plans, so not just avoidance and rest, but an active approach to avoiding overuse injuries. And that's taking variability, strength training, and muscle building to its highest level. And these randomized trials have all shown effectiveness in that regard. But as a lot of the faces in the room I recognize from the bike trails and things, cycling, overuse, repetitive activities, who doesn't get off the bike and want to rub the shoulders out? That these are common. And common sources of overuse injuries in the cyclist might be knee pain, and there's a variety of joint problems that can occur, patellar tendonitis or bursitis around the IT band, for instance. Upper extremity problems are also predominant. You can get carpal tunnel or nerve pinches, or you can even have a neck strain from malposition. So these are all preventable, and they're often extrinsic factors designed around the position of the bicycle. So this speaks to how we can kind of adapt our equipment. Getting a proper bike fit and having that assessed and looking at how it works for you. If your goal is that you want to ride the core trail 3 times a week and get your aerobic exercise, perfect, but make sure that bike that you're chosen is appropriate for you. If you want to ride a century or 100 miles a week, then you also need that bike fitted properly. And thankfully, with athletic trainers here with us and physical therapists that we have in town, I think we have great resources to get proper bike fit. And I think we have other additional resources. Some of these overuse campaigns, strength protocols have also shown effectiveness in avoiding traumatic injuries. So I wanted to speak to the incidence of ACL injuries, for instance. Anterior cruciate ligament tears are commonplace in non-contact or sporting athletics, so if it's soccer or football, but these can also be prevented by enhancing our neuromuscular feedback, our proprioception, our awareness of space and time. So if they can be as strong as possible in terms of an exercise plan or pre-op conditioning, and other leaders in the sports medicine field have designed these prevent injury, enhance performance, or these PEP programs. And these are ways that we can help as leaders and directors to work on injury programs and help athletes with its agility, side jumping, building dynamic exercises. But all these conditioning things can not only help prevent overuse injuries, but keep you strong enough that we can reduce trauma. So, also want to take opportunity to discuss how we can use strength training both to enhance our enjoyment, build muscle, and prevent injury. And as we get older, we might find that bone density decreases, but so does muscle density. The term osteopenia might be known to people that we might lose bone mass, but also muscle mass can be lost, and that's called sarcopenia. And so methods to prevent muscle mass loss are, again, with exercise and strength. And the important thing in building a strength plan is to work with people or build the plan around your body type. It needs to be individualized. It needs to be planned on the calendar with periodization of ups and downs. And it needs to be progressive so that each plateau is higher than the next or is higher than the last, and we can continue to gain strength. Most oftentimes it's recommended these are concentric exercises, if it's bench press or shoulder presses or bicep curls, but they use multiple joints at the same time. That's where some of the stationary equipment and the squat racks or bench press machines can be helpful. And you want to think that the weight training you're using should accommodate or allow you to do 10 or 12 repetitions and repeat that 3 to 5 times in a set. And how much weight can you lift? Well, think about how much weight you could maybe lift in a single interval, and that's called the 1 repetition maximum. And think 75% of that 1 repetition maximum should be what you're trying to reproduce, 10 or 12 repetitions in a row. 3 to 5 times a week. It's often a helpful tool to help prevent loss of muscle mass and continue to build strength. And with strength training, it's very important that these neuromuscular feedback loops are coming back. So signaling molecules in the muscles, they can help to stimulate protein synthesis, help to stimulate muscle fat metabolism, and encourage both weight loss, muscle gains, and build in strength. So these plans have been shown even as simple as increased weight-bearing exercises with Velcro weight vests, for instance, weight-bearing exercise with walking or dumbbell-assisted exercises, even up to the point if you're agile to do dynamic exercise like plyometrics and CrossFit or manic-type activities for those that are interested. So designing the exercise plan, it's important that we have our expectations and we move mindfully and thoughtfully, and we don't try to overdo it or lift too much, that we sustain a new injury or slip a disc or something dreadful. And that it should be part of your daily routine, that if it's not maybe weightlifting on this day, that it's walking or exercise or some other aerobic activity, and that it's interesting and you keep it fun and you have realistic goals that you can kind of set to achieve. In summary, I think these overuse injuries are common. I think if we were to compare overuse and traumatic injuries, we're going to find more individuals, perhaps even in this room, that have suffered the overuse variety, tendonitis, Plantar fasciitis I've heard thrown around already, tennis elbow for instance, and these can set you back or keep you from the sports you love. But prevention strategies can reduce the incidence by half and keep people more comfortable more of the time. Like we suggested, that's individualized training, so taking an approach that's unique to you, your passions, your desire, your goals, but also understanding that there's proper athletic form, both for our kids, they're playing sports properly, but also for the adults, that their bike is fitted correctly, their running stride is proper, their shoes are well fitted, and that we take time to sit out and give it rest afterwards. We've gone to great lengths with our outreach coordinator, with Forrest Pekka, he's our athletic trainer. We've got a great marketing team and video team. We've worked to publish and expand upon our YouTube channel. We've got some resources on bike fit and ski conditioning that you guys can search at your leisure, but we're happy to help, and as experts in sports medicine and both non-surgical and surgical solutions, we're able to help evaluate, prevent, treat, and keep you comfortable doing what you love. Happy to talk more when we can have questions at the end, but hand it off to Josh.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much for coming. I think one of the most important things that we think about as primary care physicians or family doctors is prevention. And Alex did a great job of really describing the importance of that, especially with athletics. And whether that's, just going hiking because we live in a cool spot to go do that, or all the way up through very high level competitive sports, the same rules apply, right? We need to move. We need to work on our flexibility. We need to work on our strength and conditioning. And we need to have ways that we can do that that are individualized to us, because everyone's coming from a different place. So most of us have had some little injury or some big injury along the way. That's going to change the way that you move, the way that you adapt to your athletics. Many of us have had surgeries that you have to recover from. Those things are all great. Then you get plugged into the system. But what happens when you're trying to get started on your own? We're living in an age where there's a ton of internet resources, and you can go and often even create online a program for yourself. And that's nice, but it's not necessarily hands-on. So one of the things that we really wanted to do in terms of working with Alex and with the physicians here at SOCI, but also with our broader community, is introduce a little bit about the concepts of movement, strength, and conditioning, as well as nutrition. And so down the road, we don't have a set date yet, but please look forward to this. We're going to have some more talks about Steamboat athletes. And we've got Brittany Johnson in the back of the room, who is a functional nutritionist and athlete herself. And she'll be around at the end for questions and things. And I wanted to bring up Sam House, who's a personal trainer, coach, and all-around decent fella, to talk a little bit about movement and conditioning and how it can be individualized for everybody here in the room, and something you can talk about with your friends and family when you get home if you have to report to them. Sam House, everybody.
Hi. Thank you to SOCI. Thank you, both of you, for having me. The first thing, everybody stand up. Please. Okay. I'm the guy that stands in the back of the room and moves around because I've always been that person. Just what I do, all right? Standing, moving, everything is great for you. What I want you to do, move your hips forward, move your hips back. Move your hips to the left, move your hips to the right. Now move your hips and rotate to the left, rotate to the right. Okay. There we go. So that is the start of everything that I do. If you want to sit down, you can. If you want to stand up, I don't care. That's totally fine. You're kind of in the way of the camera, but that is it's okay. I don't know if I'm in the camera. So the way that I look at movement from a very functional standpoint. Yes, we are all athletes. We all do our steamboat things. But we also have all of the functional things that we do every day. And those things happen in 3 planes of movement. You're moving forward, you're moving back, you're moving left, you're moving right, and you're rotating each direction. We want to make sure that we get all of those movements every day, and that's something that I try to personalize with clients. I don't care if your thing is pulling a garden hose, which that's a lot of people's thing. I can functionally train you to pull a garden hose in 3 dimensions. I can functionally train you how to shovel, hopefully, in 3 dimensions. Like, that's really, really important. So getting into everything that Alex went into with overuse, sometimes we get overuse because we're only shoveling with one arm. Well, let's learn how to do it with the other arm. And we can figure out all those things. Prevention is my zone, but then also taking you from potentially after PT and really bringing you back into whatever your function is. That's huge. Making sure that we are moving as much as possible. And if you're gonna sit down, normally this way, why not sit down to the side? Why not sit down and rotate? You can get all these different little bit of movements. The way that I like to think about things is joints move, proprioceptors feel, and muscles react. We have to get our joints moving to allow those muscles to know what they're gonna do. That's it. That's all I got. So the more we move, the better we feel.
Perfect.
So let's see some movement for every meal. I don't know.
Thank you very much, Sam. And really the biggest part of this concept is that yes, we might be training for some event. Most of us are just living our lives and want to be able to go out and do something cool on the weekend in a place that we love living and not get hurt and not end up under the knife, or even coming to see me and talking about physical therapy or medications or acupuncture or whatever. So really, the main points, which Alex covered very nicely, if you're starting a training activity, start slow. Work up to it. Don't overdo it. I know we all probably know somebody that goes out and does the stinger without training once a year or something like that. No. That was the Griville. That was a bad idea. And if you aren't sure what to do, we have wonderful resources in our community that you can ask for help. You can always ask your primary care physician or provider for help. You can always ask your coaches and your personal trainers. You can always ask your nutritionists. You can always ask your friends, and most of them will have good ideas because we live in a place where people are helpful. But just kind of keep that in mind, that if you're not sure what to do, find a place to start and go from there. And speaking of great places to start, one way that most of us start every day is with eating. And Roseanne's going to talk to us about nutrition.
All right. So, Josh, do as I say, not as I do with the training as going out for the ride. Same with nutrition. Do as I say, not as I do. None of us are perfect with how we eat. It's a work in progress, right? But if we want to be the best that we can be, our best selves with our sport, we need to feed the engine correctly. And the engine and before I get started, this is why I have pictures so I remember what I'm going to say. So yeah, go to the picture. Those who know me know I cannot talk about food without talking about fruits and vegetables. This is my kitchen counter from a week or so ago. We have a little gardening greenhouse going, so we're in the throes of tomatoes. So it's easy to eat healthy at the moment, but we want to sustain that. So I can't talk about nutrition without talking about the cell. Really, we're not feeding our stomach, we're not feeding ourselves emotionally. If we're feeding an athlete, we are feeding our cells. And when we think of a cell and we think of sports, most of us think about, oh, I've got to feed those muscles. We think of our muscles, but it's a hyperdynamic state, an increased metabolic state to be exercising, not only for our muscles, but our heart, our lung, kidneys, our whole endocrine system. The liver is on hyperdrive. Even our brain is more active when we're working out than when we are actually working or studying. So it is an increased metabolic state when we are participating in any of our sports. We do need to realize that when we start off early season, because we are seasonal here, that's why we flip our sports: snowshoeing, hiking, skiing, biking, golfing, skiing. We, in the beginning of the season, have an increased need. Our body needs more calories, more demand, and as we become more efficient at our sport through the season, our demand decreases. So conditioning actually is not just the muscles like we've been hearing about, but also our metabolic state. Our cells require less energy as we get better at our sport. And we flip it a couple times a year in this town, okay? So what our cells need and use is glucose. None of us eat glucose. Glucose is not available. the closest we have in our diet to glucose is sucrose, which is cane sugar, fructose or high fructose corn syrups, fructose, which is from fruit, lactose from milk, and then carbohydrates with or without fiber, and then finally your proteins and fats. Most foods are whole foods. They are not just a carbohydrate. In fact, I think we've done a disservice to our community by talking about carbs, fats, and proteins, because most whole foods have a combination of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and we need them all. So we don't just build muscle by eating protein. We build muscle by eating whole foods, and that includes carbohydrates and fat and protein all together. So when we think of proteins, we think of things like meats, milks, nuts, beans, fish. We think of those as proteins. Most of those have fats and carbohydrates mixed in. Unless you're an actual meat, then it's just protein and fat. But if you get into the beans and the nuts, there's also some carbohydrates there and there's some fiber there. And fiber is special, but we can go into that later. Oils, we think of nuts, avocados, those are fats, but most oils come with some protein mixed in as well. So they're whole foods, they're not separate. So what our cells need is glucose. That's what it relies on when we're working out. And the process of getting that glucose is either from your gut, it's converting sucrose or fructose or lactose into glucose pretty quickly. But when we're working out, we're not actively eating, so we're pulling from our stores. And those stores are found in the liver and in the muscle, and they're stored as glycogen. We use a hormone called glucagon to convert it from glycogen to glucose. That's the process of gluconeogenesis. You can actually, through training your diet, increase your glucagon stores in your liver and your muscles if you do it right. So you can actually build your stores. Next slide. So energy storage and usage. So what I basically was saying is we eat it, we digest it, and we use it, bam, or we store it in our muscle, liver, or fat cells. We cannot access those fat cells when we're exercising hard. We can only access those fat stores with kind of low intensity, like not well, stroll would use it too. But if you're going for a walk and it's kind of a vigorous pace, but you can carry on a conversation, you can pull those fat cells. That's called the fat burning zone. Otherwise, when you're working out hard, you're not using any fat. You need to rely on that liver and that muscle. And if you use all of your glucagon stores, guess what happens? Who here has not bonked? You know, I could probably write the book on bonking. So if we bonk, we're not performing at our max, and we really don't recover to the same level. We can recover a little bit, but we don't get back up to what our performance was in the beginning. When you bonk, it's like somebody who has diabetes, who is insulin dependent, and they took too much insulin or they forgot to eat and they dropped their blood sugar below 80. So when you look at studies and you look at bonking, it's low blood sugar or blood glucose levels. Next. So we want to prevent bonking if we want to be our best at our sport. If we want best performance, we not only need to prevent overuse with ramping it up, our training and reaching new plateaus and remembering to rest and remembering to diversify in our exercise and remembering to stretch and strengthen and move in all directions. We also need to eat right, and to eat right and prevent bonking, we have to start by eating before, eating during, eating after, and we also have to remember what we do in between matters. To talk about the energy consumption, we can talk about what, people talk about macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients are those carbs, fats, and proteins, but we don't eat macronutrients, we eat whole foods, and they are combinations. So just to reiterate and drive that in, some of it is a timing. So when we're eating before, some people like to intermittently fast and they like to do these I don't eat breakfast, and then I go work out, and then I wait until 2 to eat, and then I have dinner 6, and that works for me. Well, you know, if you skip it, your workout needs to be short and it needs to be low intensity. If you skip during, so some people think they're going to manage their weight by not eating. It's kind of crazy. But actually, you can manage weight by eating. Skip during, your workout better be less than 2 hours, because no matter how much you've built up those glucagon stores in your muscle and in your liver, you're going to use it by 2 hours. So if you're going to skip and not eat when you work out, it better be short. You're going to skip your after workout, well, you're going to miss building your glucagon stores. And then you're going to suffer your next day's workout or your next activity because you just decrease the building of those stores. Skip the healthy eating in between, you know, eat junk food, eat ultra processed food. That's a sure setup to bonk. So pre-eating within 2 hours of a workout, you should eat light. So we probably all experience eating a heavy meal and then trying to do something and it really doesn't work. I think runners are the best at knowing not to do that because you just can't do it. They know how they feel. No eating, once again, it should be a short and light workout. Heavy meal, you can go for a stroll. In fact, it's good after a heavy meal to get up and move around. Otherwise, you really should wait 4 hours if you're going to do an intensive workout and you just had a Thanksgiving dinner. And when we hydrate, it's not just during, we hydrate before. So fluid intake is not just with your activity, but before. Next. So eating during your workout, if you have bonked, that's when you need your gel or your honey stinger or your chews. And it's not a bad idea to carry that with you because you may plan to eat healthy, but it just may not, you know, maybe it was colder and your body was using more energy, or it was harder than you thought it was going to be, and you think you're figuring it all out, and you end up bonking. Well, by the time you've bonked, you need the closest thing to glucose as you can get, and that would be sucrose. And these, basically, that's what they are. They don't have any fiber. They have a lot of sugar, and you need sugar because your blood sugar is below 80. So if you don't prevent it, you need that. So it's good to have it in your back pocket. To avoid bonking, it's always good to eat at 2-hour intervals. If you wait until you feel hungry when you're working out, then it's too late. Then you have bonked. So you do need to eat something. People like things like bars, but realize you can do homemade things. You can do bread with peanut butter and bananas and honey on it, like a little teeny mini sandwich that you can pop in your mouth. You can do trail mix. You can mix your own trail mix. So the prevention of bonking, you would do a combination where you're getting some fat and some protein and some carbohydrates in whole foods that include fiber that allows the energy to slowly be absorbed through your gut, and you can be using it. You can't eat a lot because it won't feel well, and of course you are hydrating because you keep hydrating before, during, and then we'll go to after. So after you exercise, you want to build up those glucagon stores and you want to clean up. So when we work out, we actually produce more free radicals than just sitting here. Those free radicals are toxic and harmful to our bodies. They need to be cleaned up. We clean up those free radicals with antioxidants. Antioxidants are found in fruits and vegetables. So you want your post-eating to include fruits and vegetables. You want them to be, once again, whole foods. So people think, oh, I just worked out, I need to eat protein, I need high protein. We need whole foods, we need it all. So you want to eat within 2 hours to build your stores. You want it to include fruit and vegetables so that you get your antioxidants. Milk in some ways can be a great recovery food because it does have sugar in it, and it does have protein in it, and it does have some fat in it. So that can be part of it. Some people, if they did a hard workout, their stomach is not very happy or friendly, and so they may need to slowly snack over those 2 hours as opposed to having a big bolus of food. So really what you're doing post-exercise is what you're going to do in between other times of the day. You're going to avoid those ultra-processed foods. They may seem like fun, your chips, your cookies, your store-bought cookies, whatever. But too much sugar is actually inflammatory and it's harmful. Alcohol is a sugar as well. That doesn't mean we don't partake in sugar. It doesn't mean we don't partake in alcohol, but we have to realize if we want to be our best at our performance, that we need to be cognizant of how much partying we're doing, how much junk food we're consuming. We want to focus on getting that healthy stuff in, getting the fruits and vegetables. If I were to say 7 to 10 a day, it would not shock many people, but there are some people it would shock. How do I get 7 to 10 in a day? Wow. And once again, we hydrate throughout the day. A little note on hydration. Many of us, especially as we age, want to shut off the hydration dinner or post-dinner so we can actually get good sleep, because sleep is important. And as you age, your bladder does change, male and female. Next, the hydration before, during, and after. So when do you do electrolytes? The secret is the majority of your electrolytes, sodium, magnesium, potassium, comes from not the powdered stuff you buy to put in your water, but comes from your food. The foods that are high in sodium, magnesium, potassium, everything we need are, once again, fruit and vegetables. So watermelon is kind of a fun thing in the summer to hydrate and replace your magnesium and potassium, etc., after a workout. And this time of year, we'll be getting into some citrus, which can have lots of healthy stuff. Don't forget your veggies, because they also have a lot as well. If we were to go back to that picture, I probably should have put it on this screen, but go back a couple. There's lovely tacos here that have all of that in it. So there is some, tomatoes. I wonder where those tomatoes came from, huh? And jalapenos. I'll show you where they are in the greenhouse next. And there's sauteed veggies in here. There's lemon. There's corn tortillas, and we are meat eaters, so there's some sort of leftover meat on here. That's how we do our leftovers. So you can go ahead and, but basically with your hydration, just keep in mind you need electrolyte fluid probably around 2 to 3 water bottles into it, or Camelback into it. You might need some of that powdered stuff. How do you know if you're low on your electrolytes? Muscle cramping, stomach cramping, feeling dizzy, headache, feeling confused. You don't want to feel that. You want to avoid it. But those are some signs of either low magnesium, potassium, or sodium, which are the 3 most common. And with that said, enjoy your food. Have fun with your food. This is some of our homemade pizza. Oh, look at, there's zucchini on here, Al. And yellow squash, I know how much you love that. And the fresh tomatoes, which is so much fun to have some of those things. So we'd love to open it up to questions.